From Studio 3 at Buzz TV, it's The Horse's Mouth with Tom McManus.
All right, time now for Campo's Corner here on The Horse's Mouth. Of course, at my bar, at Tommy Max, and brought to you by our good friends at Dasher and Hot Spring Spas of Jacksonville. Coach Campo is here, of course, and he's brought a guest, our good friend Matt Hayes from 1010XL. Matt, how you doing, brother?
Tommy, how are you?
Welcome back to the show. Great to have you, Coach Campo.
Hey, Tommy.
You're always looking good.
Hey, listen,
the hair always looks perfect.
Well, see, I have to, my image, the older you get, you have to be more careful with it.
He's well coiffed.
It's very important. That's right.
Yes.
Well coiffed. Good one. So listen, the football season just ended, but it never ends because the combine's next week, right? And then we've got free agency coming. We got the draft coming. Next thing you know, they'll be back in camp. Let's start with the combine. Overall, what's your? Because you're a big-time writer for college football. Of course, you're on XL Primetime. Who do you write for? ESPN?
Saturday Down South.
Okay, very good. And I know you're one of the experts. You cover a lot of college ball, which I do not, as I stated. But how much do you put into the combine and all the testing results?
Well, I think it's as much as anything it's how do these guys react under stress.
Okay.
It's not really as much of what they can do X's and O's wise, because your tape is your resume. You know that from being a former player.
Yep.
I think it's as much of putting these guys through stressors of what do you know, what have you learned, what can you show me on a whiteboard, and the interview process. And I think that's as important as anything at the combine.
My favorite thing to watch, Coach, other than the quarterbacks throwing, is when they get the players especially linemen and defensive players in the drills. Because it's one thing to run on your own. It's another thing to run and move on command instinctively. You know what I mean? It's easier when you know where you're going. It's not so easy when you're waiting for the coach to tell you where to go. What do you take out of the combine?
Well, first of all, it's about athletic ability, and I think Matt's right as far as the stress, because it's the first time that the NFL is really looking at him with the idea that, hey, we're grading this guy in one way or another. Okay. And it's medical and the interviews, the stress part of that as well. Yep. So to me, I like the drills because they're set drills that they're comparing to people for the last 20 years or whatever it is. In other words, they're performing athletically. So we used to grade them. I graded them 1 to whatever if I was grading the defensive backs, for example, just on how they performed athletically.
You know what else too, Tommy? Is I truly believe this, that it's also they want to see how you react from the end of your college season to the combine, so 2.5 months. Have you stayed in shape? Have you gotten better? They don't want you going in there and running slower than what you showed on tape. So I think that's also part of it as well.
I think the hardest thing is the psyche, the mental. Is this the kind of guy I want on my team? Because they're all coached up on how to interview, right? So now it's even harder to figure out, is this guy going to fit in my culture, right? I can't have a prima donna into a culture where we don't accept that unless you're really, really wicked good, but we know you're going to show up on Sundays. You know what I mean? I think that's the toughest thing. And I think quarterback is even harder because, look, in college, especially at the highest levels, the guy's open, you got time, you hit him.
Yeah.
The windows are as big as this room. The NFL, they shrink, down to almost nothing. So can they handle the rigors physically and, emotionally and all that? I think that's a tough one to figure out.
I think the good ones will compete.
Yeah.
In other words, I think when they walk in there, they can't wait to run. They can't wait to do the drills. And I think that shows up a little bit on how they, whether they're happy with the 40 or whatever it is. I talk about all the time Larry Brown. His was in a individual workout. But he came out and ran a 4.5 something, and he wasn't happy with it. He ran it again. He 4.48. He ran it again. 4.47. He said, "I'm still fast." He ran it one more time. I finally said, "That's good enough." He ran a 4.46. So
you hear stories of like Don Beebe showing up. He wasn't invited to the pro day, and he comes in jeans and bare feet, runs like a 4.3. It's ridiculous stuff. And for the people watching the show, Matt, any in particular athletes you're looking forward to watching?
I don't know anyone in particular. It's always the quarterback because you like to watch them throw.
It's a lot of them.
Yeah, we don't know how many we're going to throw, actually. Yeah. That's another thing, too. It's gotten to the point now where all these quarterbacks wait till their pro day to throw. To me, I honestly look at this as the interview thing I think is really important because if you're a team like the Jaguars that is desperate for like a attitude type guy on the offensive and defensive lines, I think you can find that out with interviews. I think you can kind of delve a little bit and find those tough, hard-nosed guys that they need.
Yeah, and hopefully you saw them at the Senior Bowl, so that'll match.
Well, then most of them will go do a pro day, the pro day to me is more even in that situation because not only are you listening to the scouts what they say about them, but you can actually talk to the D-line coach, you can talk to the trainer, you can talk to the strength trainer, all those things at the pro day.
All right, as we wrap up here from each one of you, Jaguars needs, not specific players going into the draft or free agency, how would you rank them? I'll start with you, Matt.
Interior lines, both sides.
Both sides.
And I mean, I want a tough guy that will rip your heart out.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they have that.
I don't either.
I don't think they have a guy on either side of the line of scrimmage that will absolutely annihilate you.
Not on the interior.
That's what you need.
I think Anton's got some of that, and I think Cam has it when healthy.
Yeah,
but the interior.
Yeah, on the interior, the middle three. I want somebody who when he's on there, if you have to overdraft him by 4 or 5 places, then overdraft him. Yeah, because I want a tough dude that you can run behind.
There's a couple of kids out of Texas I looked at, but saw their names and saw what they said about them. One was dominates double teams. I'm like, I like that. How about you, Coach?
I feel the same way. I mean, we've talked about it on the show on prime time. Again, the one thing that's going to be very difficult, in my opinion, I believe when they get to number 17, if they stay there, there's going to be a couple of those guys hanging there. But there's going to be about 3 corners, and there's going to be a couple of wide receivers that might be chase-type guys. I don't know if they're that kind of guy.
No, you're right.
That's going to be a difficult decision.
It's like that shiny diamond.
It's hard to turn down a guy that scores touchdowns. But at the same time, we need more physicality, and we need to protect the quarterback a little better.
We'll get some of that through free agency, too. And then you
absolutely.
Can
fill in that'll be a factor as well.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate you being here. Of course, you can catch Matt Hayes every weekday 12 to 3 on 1010XL's XL Prime Time. And Coach Campo's there pretty much every single day as well. And he just hangs out at the bar. You can check out their great profiles by going to thedailynewsnetwork.com and this conversation and hundreds of others. Until next time, y'all stay safe out there and be cool. We'll see you right here on The Horse's Mouth. Cheers.
The coach should be going to bed at night thinking about the athlete and how they're going to help that athlete improve. They shouldn't be worrying about how am I going to quantify their improvement, or am I going to have to keep up with all this information? Those things that are kind of background to the coach focusing there on the athlete. And so what Dasher does is it takes all those side things away, allowing the coach to focus then on the athlete.